The message traveled across the stars for 47 years before it reached its destination. It was a simple radio wave, carrying sounds and images from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. The beings who received it had been watching the stars for 11,000 years. They had seen species rise and fall. They had built an empire of peace across 1,000 worlds. And now, they had found something new. Ambassador Kethvari stood before the great viewing screen in the council chamber of the Galactic Concord. She was tall and thin, with skin that shifted colors like water under moonlight. Her people, the Etherians, had been part of the Concord for 9,000 years. In all that time, they had helped bring 19 new species into the fold. Kethvari herself had overseen the last 7 integrations. She was considered the finest diplomat in the known galaxy. But as she watched the images from the distant planet called Earth, she felt something strange in her chest. The humans, as they called themselves, were unlike anything she had seen before. They were soft, fragile creatures with short lives and limited senses. They could not see into the ultraviolet spectrum. They could not hear the low songs of the cosmos. They lived for barely 100 years, if they were lucky. And yet, in those short lives, they had done terrible things to each other. The images showed wars, endless wars, humans fighting humans with stones, then swords, then guns, then bombs that could turn cities to ash. They killed each other over land, over resources, over ideas, over differences so small that Kethvari could not even understand them. In just 10,000 years, they had gone from caves to nuclear weapons. The speed of their development was frightening. "They are primitive," said Counselor Veth, a massive being covered in thick gray plates. His species, the Torvani, were known for their caution. "We should not contact them. They are dangerous. All young species are dangerous," Kethvari replied. "That is why we must guide them. If we leave them alone, they will destroy themselves. Or worse, they will develop interstellar travel and bring their violence to the stars." The council debated for 3 standard cycles. In the end, they voted to send a welcome fleet. 12 beautiful white ships, each one carrying diplomats, translators, cultural experts, and gifts. They would meet the humans at the edge of their solar system and invite them to join the great family of civilized species. Kethvari was chosen to lead the mission. She spent months preparing. She learned the human languages, studied their cultures, watched their films, and read their books. She found much to admire. Humans had created beautiful art, moving music, and stories that touched something deep inside her. They were capable of great kindness and great cruelty, often at the same time. They were complicated in ways that older species had long forgotten. The journey to Sol System took 2 years. When the welcome fleet finally arrived at the designated coordinates, they found nothing waiting for them. The humans had detected their approach, of course. Earth's primitive radio telescopes had picked up the fleet's energy signatures months ago. But there was no response. No greeting. Nothing. Kethvari waited. She sent messages in every human language, explaining who they were and why they had come. She assured the humans that they meant no harm. She invited them to send representatives for peaceful talks. Days passed, then weeks, then months. "Perhaps they are afraid," suggested her assistant, a young Etherian named Mira. "Their history is full of stories about invaders from the sky. They may think we are here to conquer them. Then we must show them we are not," Kethvari said. She ordered the fleet to power down all weapons. She had the ships arrange themselves in a pattern that, according to human cultural records, symbolized peace. She continued to broadcast messages of friendship. 90 standard cycles passed. The welcome fleet floated in the darkness at the edge of Sol System, waiting for an answer that never came. And then, something appeared on their sensors. It came from the direction of Earth, moving faster than anything the Concord had ever seen from a species so young. At first, the sensors could not identify it. The shape was wrong. The energy readings were impossible. As it grew closer, Kethvari felt her color shift to pale blue, a sign of deep unease. The ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long. It dwarfed the largest vessel in the welcome fleet. Its hull was black, angular, and covered with devices that the Concord's computers could not recognize. Strange energies pulsed along its surface. Radiation leaked from its engines in patterns that set off every alarm on every ship. "What is that?" Mira whispered. Kethvari had no answer. In all her years of service, she had never seen anything like it. The vessel looked less like a ship and more like a weapon given form. Every line, every angle, every surface seemed designed for one purpose: war. The black ship did not slow down as it approached. It did not request permission to enter the space claimed by the welcome fleet. It simply came, like a predator moving through territory it considered its own. "Should we raise shields?" asked the fleet commander, a veteran Torvani named Geth. Kethvari hesitated. Raising shields could be seen as a hostile act, but leaving them down felt like standing naked before a storm. Before she could decide, a transmission came through. It was in Galactic Standard, the common language of the Concord. The humans had been listening to their broadcasts. They had learned. "This is Captain Helena Vance of the United Earth ship Prometheus," said a female voice. It was calm, controlled, and utterly without fear. "We received your invitation. We're here to talk." The transmission ended. The black ship, the Prometheus, continued its approach until it hung in space just a few kilometers from the welcome fleet. Up close, it was even more terrifying. Kethvari could see the scars on its hull, places where metal had been torn and repaired. This ship had seen battle. Many battles. "Ambassador," said Commander Geth, his voice tight. "That vessel is carrying enough weapons to destroy our entire fleet. I am detecting energy signatures consistent with nuclear warheads, kinetic accelerators, and at least 3 weapon systems I cannot identify." "Why would they bring such a ship to a diplomatic meeting?" Mira asked. Kethvari stared at the Prometheus through the viewing screen. She thought about everything she had learned about humans, their history, their wars, their endless capacity for violence, and she began to understand. "Because to them," she said slowly, "this is diplomatic." She requested permission to board the human vessel. The response came quickly. Permission granted. A shuttle was dispatched to bring her across. The inside of the Prometheus was not what Kethvari expected. She had prepared herself for primitive conditions, rough metal walls and basic facilities. What she found instead was a ship that felt alive with purpose. The corridors were wide enough for soldiers to move through in full combat gear. The walls were reinforced with materials she did not recognize. Every few meters, she passed sealed doors that led to weapon stations, medical bays, and areas marked with symbols she could not read. The crew moved around her with quick, efficient steps. They wore matching uniforms and carried themselves with a discipline that reminded her of soldiers from the most martial Concord species. But there was something else in their eyes, something she had not seen in a very long time. They were ready for anything, ready for everything. Captain Helena Vance met her in what the humans called the war room. It was a circular chamber filled with holographic displays showing tactical data, ship positions, and simulations of combat scenarios. Vance herself was a small woman by Etherian standards, with short dark hair and eyes the color of steel. She wore a uniform covered in medals and insignia that Kethvari did not understand. "Ambassador Kethvari," Vance said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus." Kethvari touched the offered hand carefully. Human skin was warm, much warmer than her own. "Thank you, Captain. I must admit, we were expecting a different kind of vessel." "I know." Vance smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You were expecting a diplomatic ship, something pretty and harmless, something that would show you we are peaceful and eager to join your Concord. Is that not why you are here?" Vance gestured to a pair of chairs. They sat facing each other, 2 representatives of species separated by thousands of light years and millions of years of evolution. "Let me tell you something about humanity, Ambassador," Vance began. "We have been watching you for a long time, not just since your fleet arrived, but for decades before that. We detected your communications. We decoded your languages. We studied your Concord." Kethvari felt her colors shift again. "You were spying on us? We were learning. And do you know what we learned?" Vance leaned forward, her steel eyes fixed on the ambassador. "We learned that your Concord is dying. That is absurd. The Concord has maintained peace for 11,000 years. Peace." Vance spoke the word like it was something rotten. "Is that what you call it? In the last 1,000 years alone, you have lost 42 member species, 42 entire civilizations. Gone. Some were destroyed by the hegemony. Some were consumed by the Void Collective. Some simply faded away because they forgot how to fight for their survival. Kethvari wanted to argue, but she could not. The numbers were accurate. She had read the reports herself. The Concord was shrinking, slowly but surely, like an old animal losing strength. The hegemony raids your border worlds, Vance continued. The Void Collective expands closer every year. The Peripheral Accord collapsed 2 centuries ago, and you did nothing to stop it. You send diplomats to every crisis. You pass resolutions. You express concern. And while you are busy being civilized, the predators of this galaxy are eating you alive. We believe in peace, Kethvari said, but her voice sounded weak, even to her own ears. You believe in the idea of peace, but peace is not an idea. It is a state that must be defended, and you have forgotten how to defend anything. Vance stood and walked to one of the holographic displays. It showed a map of the galaxy, with the Concord's territory marked in blue. Red zones pressed in from all sides. Do you see this? These red areas are controlled by species that do not share your belief in peace. They take what they want because there is no one to stop them, and every year, they take more. Kethvari rose to her feet. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? Vance turned to face her. For a moment, the human captain's expression softened, and Kethvari saw something unexpected there. Not cruelty, not aggression, something that looked almost like sadness. We want you to understand why we sent a warship, Vance said. Earth did not send diplomats because diplomats cannot protect you. Pretty words cannot stop a hegemony raider from burning your colonies. Strongly worded letters cannot turn back the Void Collective. Only strength can do that. Only the willingness to fight. Humans are a violent species, Kethvari said. Your own history proves it. Yes, we are violent. We have spent our entire existence fighting. Fighting each other. Fighting nature. Fighting for every scrap of food, every piece of land, every idea we believed in. Vance's voice grew hard. But do you know what else we learned in all those wars? We learned how to win. We learned how to protect the things we love. We learned that the universe does not reward the gentle. It rewards the strong. She stepped closer to Kethvari, close enough that the ambassador could feel the heat radiating from her small human body. You invited us to join your Concord. But we did not come here to join. We came here to show you what you have forgotten. We came here to remind you that there is a price for peace, and that price is eternal readiness for war. Kethvari stared at the human captain. In her 3 centuries of diplomatic service, she had met beings from dozens of species. She had negotiated with the most difficult minds in the galaxy, but she had never met anyone like Helena Vance. The woman radiated something that the civilized species of the Concord had long ago lost. She radiated danger. The Concord will not accept your philosophy, Kethvari said finally. We have moved beyond violence. No, Vance replied. You have forgotten violence. There is a difference. And one day, when the threats pressing against your borders finally break through, you will remember that difference. You will remember it as your worlds burn and your people die. She walked back to her chair and sat down, suddenly looking tired. We are not here to threaten you, Ambassador. We are here to offer you a choice. You can continue on your current path, trusting in diplomacy and good intentions, and watch as your civilization slowly crumbles. Or you can accept that the galaxy is not a peaceful place and start preparing to defend yourselves. And what role would humanity play in this? Vance smiled again, and this time there was something almost warm in it. We would do what we have always done. We would fight. Not for territory or resources or power. We would fight because someone has to. Because the alternative is letting the darkness win. The meeting lasted for several more hours. When Kethvari finally returned to her own ship, her mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. The human captain's words had disturbed her deeply. Everything she believed about civilization, about progress, about the purpose of intelligent life, had been challenged. But as she looked back at the Prometheus, that massive black shape hanging in the darkness like a sleeping predator, she felt something else as well. For the first time in centuries, she felt protected. She did not know yet whether humanity was a blessing or a curse. She did not know whether their violence would save the Concord or destroy it. But she knew, with absolute certainty, that the galaxy had changed. The humans had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The ambassador returned to her quarters and began composing her report to the High Senate. She wrote for hours, trying to capture everything she had seen and heard. But in the end, she could only think of one way to summarize the encounter. Earth did not send diplomats, she wrote. They sent a warning, and we would be fools not to listen. Outside her window, the Prometheus waited in the darkness, its weapons powered down but ready. Its crew slept in shifts, never leaving the ship undefended. And somewhere in its heart, Captain Helena Vance stared at the stars and thought about all the battles yet to come. The humans had arrived, and they had brought terror with them. But perhaps, Kethvari thought as sleep finally claimed her, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The High Senate of the Galactic Concord had not seen such chaos in 300 years. Beings from 47 different species filled the great chamber, their voices rising in argument and fear. Holographic displays showed images of the human warship from every angle, each view more disturbing than the last. "They are savages," shouted Counselor Veth, his gray plates flushing dark with anger. "Their ship is designed for nothing but destruction. We must declare them a threat and close our borders." "And what good would that do?" replied a small, furry being named Trix, representative of the Milani traders. "Did you see the energy readings from their engines? They could cross our entire territory in weeks. Closing borders means nothing to them." Ambassador Kethvari stood at the center of the chamber, waiting for her turn to speak. She had spent the journey back from Sol System reviewing everything she knew about humans. The more she learned, the more complicated her feelings became. Finally, the Senate Speaker, an ancient being whose species no one could remember, called for silence. Ambassador Kethvari will now present her full report. Kethvari stepped forward. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. "Honored members of the Senate," she began, "I have met with Captain Helena Vance of the human vessel Prometheus. I have walked their ship, spoken with their crew, and studied their species in detail. What I have to tell you will not be easy to hear." She activated her own holographic display. Instead of showing the warship, she showed images from human history, paintings of ancient battles, photographs of burning cities, video of soldiers marching across torn landscapes. "Humans have been at war with themselves for their entire existence," she said. "In just the last century of their history, they fought 2 conflicts that killed over 100 million of their own kind. They developed weapons capable of destroying their planet many times over. They stood at the edge of extinction more than once." "This proves our point," Counselor Veth interrupted. "They are too dangerous to. Please, let me finish." Kethvari's voice was firm. "Yes, humans are violent. Yes, their history is filled with horror. But there is another side to their story." She changed the display. Now it showed different images. A human doctor treating a sick child, firefighters running into a burning building, soldiers sharing their food with enemy prisoners, scientists working together across national boundaries to cure diseases. In the midst of all their violence, humans developed something remarkable, Kethvari said. They developed compassion, not the easy compassion of species who have never known struggle, but the hard compassion that comes from understanding suffering. They help each other not because it is easy, but because they know what it means to need help. "Pretty words," said another counselor, a crystalline being whose name translated roughly as shimmering truth. "But what does this have to do with the threat they pose?" "Everything." Kethvari took a deep breath. "Captain Vance told me something during our meeting. She said that humans do not fight because they enjoy it. They fight because they have no choice. On their world, peace was never given. It had to be earned, defended, and protected." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The Concord has enjoyed peace for 11,000 years. We have become comfortable. We have forgotten what it means to struggle. And because of that, we have forgotten how to protect ourselves." A murmur ran through the chamber. Many of the counselors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "The humans see what we cannot see," Kethvari continued. "They see that our peace is not strength. It is weakness pretending to be strength. The hegemony raids our borders because they know we will not fight back. The Void Collective expands toward us because they know we will not stop them. We have traded our survival instinct for comfortable lies." "What are you suggesting?" asked the Senate Speaker. "That we abandon our principles? That we become like them?" "No, I am suggesting that we learn from them." Kethvari turned to face the entire chamber. The humans did not send a warship to threaten us. They sent it to show us what protection looks like. They want us to understand that peace is not the absence of weapons. Peace is having the strength to defend what you love. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Counselors argued. Alliances shifted. Old friendships were tested. But in the end, the Senate reached a decision that would change the course of galactic history. They invited the humans to send a delegation to the Concorde's capital world. The Prometheus arrived 2 weeks later, accompanied by 2 other human vessels, the Achilles and the Thermopylae. The names meant nothing to the Concorde's translators, but Ambassador Kethvari had done her research. These were names from human history, names of warriors who had fought against impossible odds, names of heroes who had died protecting others. The humans were making a statement. They were telling the galaxy who they were. Captain Vance led the human delegation. She was accompanied by soldiers, scientists, and diplomats. But even the diplomats walked with a military bearing. Even the scientists carried themselves like fighters. Kethvari watched them move through the grand halls of the Concorde's capital and saw the effect they had on everyone around them. The civilized species of the Concorde had never seen anything like them. These soft, fragile creatures with their short lives and limited senses radiated something that the galaxy had forgotten. They radiated power, not the gentle power of wisdom or the subtle power of influence. Raw, dangerous power. The power of beings who had clawed their way up from nothing and would not be pushed back down. "You seem troubled, Ambassador," Captain Vance said as they walked together toward the Senate chamber. "I am watching my colleagues," Kethvari replied. "They do not know how to react to you. You frighten them." "Good." Kethvari stopped walking. "Good? You want them to be afraid?" Vance turned to face her. The human captain's steel eyes held no apology. "Fear is a gift, Ambassador. It is the first sign of wisdom. Only a fool looks at a predator and feels no fear. Your colleagues are beginning to understand that the galaxy is full of predators, and the Concorde has spent too long pretending otherwise. We prefer to believe in the good nature of intelligent beings." "And how has that worked out?" Vance gestured at the grand hall around them. "This capital was built 9,000 years ago. How many species walked these halls then? How many walk them now?" Kethvari did not answer. She knew the numbers. 47 species remained in the Concorde. At its peak, there had been 89. "Every species you lost died believing the same thing," Vance said quietly. "They believed that peace was natural, that violence was a sickness that civilized beings outgrew. They were wrong. Peace is unnatural. Peace requires constant effort, constant vigilance, constant strength. The moment you stop fighting for peace, you lose it." They continued walking in silence. The Senate chamber loomed ahead, its ancient doors carved with symbols of unity and cooperation, symbols that meant nothing to the threats gathering at the Concorde's borders. The meeting with the full Senate was tense. Counselors asked questions designed to trap the humans, to make them reveal aggressive intentions. Captain Vance answered each one with calm honesty that was more disturbing than any lie would have been. "Yes, our ship can destroy your entire defensive fleet," she admitted when asked about the Prometheus's capabilities. "We built it that way deliberately, not because we wanted to threaten you, but because we learned long ago that anything worth doing is worth doing well. If we build a ship for war, we build the best warship we can imagine. And what stops you from using that power against us?" asked Counselor Veth. "Nothing." Vance let the word hang in the air. "Nothing stops us except our choice not to. And that is the point, Counselor. Power is not evil. Power simply is. What matters is how you choose to use it." She stood and walked to the center of the chamber, where a holographic map of the galaxy slowly rotated. "Let me show you something," she said. She highlighted a region on the map, a cluster of systems near the galactic rim. "This is hegemony territory. For the past 100 years, they have been raiding Concorde border worlds. They take resources, they take prisoners, they burn what they cannot carry. And what has the Concorde done in response?" "We have filed formal complaints," said a counselor. "We have imposed economic sanctions. You have done nothing." Vance's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "You have written letters while your citizens were taken as slaves. You have passed resolutions while your colonies burned. You have expressed concern while species under your protection were hunted to extinction." The silence that followed was absolute. "The hegemony does not fear you," Vance continued. They raid your territory because they know you will not stop them. They know that all your civilization, all your technology, all your grand principles mean nothing because you are not willing to fight for them. She turned to face the counselors directly. Humans are different. We do not let our people be taken. We do not let our homes be burned. We do not file complaints against those who attack us. We destroy them. That is barbaric, said Shimmering Truth. Perhaps. But our people are safe. Can you say the same? The crystalline counselor had no response. Captain Vance returned to her seat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Senate speaker leaned forward, its ancient body creaking with the movement. What exactly are you offering, Captain? What do humans want from the Concord? Vance smiled. It was a strange expression, equal parts warmth and danger. We want you to survive, she said. We have been watching this galaxy for a long time. We have seen the hegemony. We have seen the Void Collective. We have seen the predators that circle the edges of civilized space, waiting for signs of weakness. And we have made a decision. She stood again, and this time her voice rang through the chamber with absolute conviction. Earth has decided that we will not let the light of civilization be extinguished. We will not stand by while peaceful species are hunted and consumed. We will not pretend that diplomacy alone can protect the innocent from those who only understand violence. You want to be our protectors? Counselor Veth asked, with obvious skepticism. No. We want to show you how to protect yourselves. We want to teach you what we have learned in our long, bloody history. We want to give you the tools and the knowledge to defend what you love. She paused, looking around the chamber at the frightened, confused faces of the Concord's leaders. But first, we want to show you what we can do. We want to demonstrate what strength really looks like. And then we want you to make a choice. You can continue as you have been, hoping that peace will last forever, watching your civilization slowly shrink until there is nothing left. Or you can accept that survival requires sacrifice and start building a future worth fighting for. The Senate debated for another week. Old alliances crumbled. New ones formed. Species that had not agreed on anything in centuries found common ground in their fear of the humans, and in something else as well. Hope, because hidden beneath the terror of humanity's violence was a promise. A promise that the darkness could be held back. A promise that the predators could be stopped. A promise that peace could be protected if only someone was willing to pay the price. In the end, the Senate voted to accept humanity's offer. Not all of them, of course. Some species withdrew from the Concord entirely, preferring to take their chances alone. Others accepted grudgingly, never fully trusting the violent newcomers. But enough agreed. Enough saw the truth in Captain Vance's words. Enough understood that the galaxy was changing, and that the only way to survive the change was to change with it. The Prometheus and its sister ships remained in Concord space as guests. Human advisors began working with Concord military forces. Human engineers shared their weapon designs. Human soldiers trained the soft, peaceful beings of the Concord in the arts of war, and Ambassador Kethvari watched it all with a mixture of wonder and fear. She had invited humanity into the heart of galactic civilization. She had opened the door to a species that could either save them all or destroy them. Only time would tell which it would be. But as she watched Captain Vance reviewing defense plans with the Concord's military commanders, she felt something she had not felt in centuries. She felt like the future might actually be worth living to see. The humans had brought terror to the galaxy. But they had also brought something else. They had brought hope. And sometimes, Kethvari realized, hope and terror were two sides of the same coin. Sometimes you needed to face the darkness to find the light. Sometimes you needed to embrace the violence to protect the peace. The humans understood this. They had learned it in their long, painful history. And now, they were going to teach it to the rest of the galaxy, whether the galaxy was ready for that lesson or not. The message came from a dying world. Teth Kai Prime had been a thriving colony once. 3 million beings lived there, working the rich mineral deposits that made their planet valuable. They were a peaceful people, members of the Concord for over 2,000 years. They had never known war. They had never needed weapons. And now they were being hunted. The hegemony raiders had arrived 6 years ago. At first, they had demanded tribute. The Tethkai had paid, believing that compliance would bring peace. But the raiders wanted more. They always wanted more. The tribute became slavery. The slavery became slaughter. And through it all, The Concorde did nothing but send strongly worded messages. Ambassador Kethvari read the latest report from Tethkai Prime with trembling hands. The raiders had destroyed the last defensive satellite. The planetary shield was failing. In 3 days, maybe 4, the hegemony would have complete access to the surface. And then the real horror would begin. "We have to do something," she said to Captain Vance. They were standing in the war room of the Prometheus, surrounded by holographic displays showing the situation in real time. "The Senate has already issued a formal condemnation," Vance replied. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "They have called for an emergency session to discuss potential responses. In 3 months, they might even vote on whether to send a fact-finding mission. 3 months. The Tethkai will all be dead in 3 months. Yes." Kethvari stared at the human captain. "Does that not bother you?" "It bothers me very much." Vance turned to face her, and the ambassador saw something burning in those steel eyes, something that looked like anger held under tight control. "It bothers me that 3 million innocent beings are going to die because your Concorde is too civilized to save them. It bothers me that the hegemony has been doing this for centuries and no one has ever stopped them. It bothers me that the galaxy is full of predators and cowards, and the cowards refuse to admit they are being eaten. Then do something." The words hung in the air between them. Vance did not respond immediately. She turned back to the holographic display, studying the positions of the hegemony ships, the condition of the Tethkai defenses, the time remaining before collapse. "If we intervene," she said slowly, "we will be acting without Senate approval. We will be violating Concorde protocols. We will be starting a conflict that could spread across the entire galaxy. I know. Your people will condemn us. They will call us warmongers, aggressors, violent primitives who cannot control their impulses. I know." Vance turned to face her again. "And you still want us to go?" Kethvari thought about the 3 million beings on Tethkai Prime. She thought about the messages she had received from their leaders, begging for help that would never come. She thought about the children who would be taken as slaves, the elderly who would be worked to death, the families that would be torn apart. "Yes," she said. "I want you to go." Captain Vance smiled. It was a cold smile, the smile of a predator about to hunt. "Then watch," she said. "Watch what humans can do when we decide to fight." The Prometheus left Concorde space without authorization. It was joined by the Achilles and the Thermopylae. 3 ships against 18 hegemony raiders, 3 ships crewed by a species that the Concorde considered barely civilized. The journey to Tethkai Prime took 4 days. During that time, Captain Vance briefed her crew on the mission. The hegemony raiders were not weak opponents. Their ships were fast, heavily armed, and crewed by experienced warriors who had been raiding civilized space for generations. "They outnumber us 6 to 1, Vance told her officers. "They have more guns, more missiles, and more experience fighting together. By any reasonable measure, we should not be able to win this fight." She paused, looking around the briefing room at the men and women who would follow her into battle. "But we are not going to fight reasonably. We are going to fight like humans. We are going to be faster, smarter, and more vicious than anything they have ever faced. We are going to show them what happens when you threaten people under our protection." The officers nodded. There was no fear in their eyes, only determination. "Rules of engagement are simple," Vance continued. "No mercy for those who harm the innocent. No quarter for those who would enslave the helpless. We fight until they are destroyed, or they run. And if they run, we chase them until they cannot run anymore." The Prometheus dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Tethkai system. The hegemony fleet detected them immediately. 18 ships turned toward the newcomers, weapons charging, confident in their overwhelming numbers. A transmission came through. The hegemony commander spoke in a harsh, clicking language that the Prometheus's computers translated instantly. "Unknown vessels, you have entered hegemony operational space. Identify yourselves and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in destruction." Captain Vance leaned forward in her command chair. "This is Captain Helena Vance of the United Earth ship Prometheus. I am here to give you one chance to leave this system. Take your ships and go. Never return to conquered space. Do this, and I will let you live." Silence. Then laughter. The hegemony commander's clicking sounds transformed into something that was clearly amusement. "You are 3 ships against 18. You are either very brave or very stupid. We will enjoy taking you apart." Vance nodded to her communications officer. The channel closed. Then she spoke to her crew. "All hands, battle stations. We are weapons free." The Prometheus leaped forward like a hunting animal released from its cage. The Achilles and Thermopylae flanked her, spreading out to maximize their fields of fire. The three human ships accelerated directly toward the hegemony formation. The raiders opened fire first. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked through space toward the approaching humans. It was a wall of destruction that should have obliterated anything in its path. It hit nothing. The human ships moved in ways that should have been impossible for vessels of their size. They spun, twisted, and accelerated in patterns that the hegemony targeting computers could not predict. Point defense systems shot down missiles with mechanical precision. Energy shields deflected plasma bolts that could have melted through meters of armor. And then the humans began to shoot back. The Prometheus's railguns fired projectiles at a significant fraction of the speed of light. They crossed the distance between the fleets in less than a second, giving the hegemony ships no time to react. The first raider died before its crew even knew they were under attack. The projectile punched through its shields, through its hull, through its engine core. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that briefly outshone the system's star. 2 more raiders died in the next 3 seconds. Then 3 more. The humans were not just shooting. They were executing. Each target was selected, tracked, and destroyed with cold efficiency. Each shot found critical systems. Each kill was clean, quick, and absolute. The hegemony commander tried to rally his forces. He ordered them to concentrate fire on the lead human ship. But the Prometheus simply was not where his targeting solutions said it should be. The human captain seemed to know where every shot was going to be before it was fired. She danced her massive warship through the battle like a living thing. Always moving, always shooting, always killing. In the first 5 minutes, half the hegemony fleet was destroyed. The raiders tried to retreat. They turned their ships toward open space, pouring power into their engines, desperate to escape the monsters that had appeared from nowhere. But the humans were faster. The Achilles and Thermopylae moved to cut off escape routes while the Prometheus continued its relentless assault. "Please." The hegemony commander's voice came through the communication channel. All his arrogance was gone. "We surrender. Stop shooting. We surrender." Captain Vance's response was calm. "You surrender. Good. Tell your remaining ships to power down all weapons and hold position. Any attempt to move will be considered hostile." The raiders obeyed. 7 ships remained from the original 18. They floated in space, weapons silent, waiting to learn their fate. Vance opened a channel to the Tethkai surface. "This is Captain Helena Vance of the United Earth ship Prometheus. The hegemony fleet has been neutralized. You are safe." The response came through filled with static and emotion. "Safe? After 6 years? We thought no one would come. We thought we were forgotten." "You were not forgotten," Vance said. "And you will never be forgotten again." News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. The story grew with each retelling. 3 human ships against 18 raiders. 11 minutes of combat. Complete victory with no human casualties. The Concord Senate reacted with outrage. Emergency sessions were called. Condemnations were drafted. Humanity was accused of reckless aggression, of starting a war that would engulf the entire galaxy, of proving that they were the violent savages everyone had feared. Ambassador Kethvari stood before the Senate and defended humanity's actions. She showed them images from Tethkai Prime, images of grateful citizens weeping with relief. She showed them recordings of the hegemony's crimes, 6 years of horror documented in terrible detail. She asked the Senate one simple question. If we had done nothing, would these 3 million beings still be alive? Would they have any future at all? Councillor Veth rose to respond. "We cannot simply attack other species whenever we feel like it. We have laws. We have protocols. If we abandon them, we become no better than the hegemony." "The hegemony is still attacking our colonies," Kethvari replied. "The protocols have not stopped them. The laws have not protected us. Only the humans have done that." The debate raged for days. But something had changed. The species of the Concord had seen what strength could accomplish. They had seen that the predators could be stopped. They had seen that protection was possible. And many of them liked what they saw. The hegemony sent a formal protest to the Concord. They demanded that the human ships be expelled from civilized space. They threatened war if their demands were not met. Captain Vance's response was transmitted publicly, broadcast across every communication channel in the galaxy. To the Hegemony Council, you have spent centuries preying on the weak. You have murdered, enslaved, and destroyed without consequence because no one was willing to stop you. That era is over. Humanity has claimed the Concord's border systems as protectorates. Any hegemony vessel entering these systems will be destroyed. Any hegemony attack on Concord populations will be answered with overwhelming force. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The hegemony tested that promise 3 times in the following months. Each time, their ships were destroyed. Each time, the humans demonstrated that they were not bluffing. Each time, the message became clearer. There was a new power in the galaxy, and that power was willing to fight. The Tethkai people built a monument on their capital world. It showed 3 angular black ships descending from the sky, weapons blazing, driving back the darkness. At its base, they inscribed words in their own language and in Galactic standard. When no one else would come, the humans came. When no one else would fight, the humans fought. They were strangers to us, and yet they risked everything to save us. We will never forget. Ambassador Kethvari visited the monument 6 months after the battle. She stood before it as the sun set over the city, watching the light play across the carved shapes of the human ships. Captain Vance stood beside her. "Does this help?" the human asked. "Knowing that some people are grateful, does it help you?" Vance was silent for a moment. "We do not do this for gratitude. We do it because it is right. We do it because someone has to. We do it because we cannot stand by and watch innocent beings suffer when we have the power to stop it. That is a very human way of thinking." "Yes, it is." Vance turned to face the ambassador. "We have learned many things in our history, Ambassador. We have learned that violence is terrible. We have learned that war destroys everything it touches. But we have also learned that there are things worse than war. Letting the innocent die when you could save them. Letting evil triumph because fighting it is too hard. Letting the light be extinguished because protecting it requires sacrifice." She looked back at the monument. "Humans will always choose to fight rather than let those things happen. We will always choose the hard path over the easy one. We will always choose to stand against the darkness, even when it seems hopeless. And what if you lose?" Vance smiled. It was a strange smile, equal parts sadness and determination. "Then we lose fighting for something that matters. We lose on our feet, not on our knees. We lose knowing that we did everything we could." She paused. "That is the human way, Ambassador. That is what you invited into your galaxy when you sent us that message across the stars." Kethvari looked at the monument one last time. The 3 ships seemed to move in the fading light, forever frozen in their moment of victory. "I am beginning to understand," she said quietly. "I am beginning to understand what you really are." "And what are we?" The ambassador thought for a long moment before answering. "You are the thing that monsters fear. You are the darkness that hunts the darkness. You are the violence that protects peace from violence." She turned to face the human captain. "You are the price that the universe demands for hope." Vance nodded slowly. "Yes, Ambassador. That is exactly what we are." They stood together as the stars came out, 2 beings from different worlds united by a common truth. The galaxy was dangerous. The predators were everywhere. The darkness was always waiting to consume the light. But now the light had defenders. Now the innocent had protectors. Now the monsters had something to fear. The humans had come, and they had brought terror with them, but it was a terror that served the light. And in a galaxy full of darkness, that was the most precious gift of all. The Void Collective had no homeworld. It had no leaders. It had no culture, no art, no dreams. It was simply hunger given form. A swarm of biomechanical entities that drifted through the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. For 4,000 years, the collective had expanded. Slowly, patiently, inevitably. It did not conquer worlds, it absorbed them. Every species it touched became part of the swarm. Every resource it found was converted into more collective. It was not evil in any meaningful sense. It was simply efficient. A perfect machine for turning matter into more of itself. 17 species had fallen to the collective. Some had fought, some had fled, some had tried to negotiate. None of it mattered. The collective did not understand resistance. It only understood growth. And now, for the first time in Concord history, the collective was moving toward their territory. Ambassador Keth Very stood in the Senate chamber, watching the holographic display with growing horror. The collective's advance was represented by a dark stain spreading across the star map, consuming system after system as it moved inexorably toward the heart of civilized space. At their current rate of expansion, reported the military analyst, a nervous Torvani scientist, they will reach our outer colonies in 18 months, our core worlds in 5 years. What are our defensive options? Asked the Senate Speaker. The analyst hesitated. We have none, Speaker. Our fleet was never designed to fight an enemy like this. The collective does not attack in formations we can predict. It does not retreat when damaged. It simply keeps coming, absorbing everything in its path, growing stronger with every victory. Then we negotiate, suggested Counselor Veth. Surely they can be reasoned with. So, citing, I was no, the collective does not negotiate. It has no individual consciousness that we can communicate with. It is a swarm, driven by instinct alone. You cannot negotiate with hunger. The chamber fell silent. For the first time since the Concord's founding, its members were facing extinction, not slow decline, not gradual loss, complete annihilation. Captain Helena Vance had been standing at the back of the chamber, listening. Now she stepped forward, and every eye turned to her. How long have you known about this threat? She asked. The Senate Speaker shifted uncomfortably. The collective has been expanding for millennia. We have monitored their progress. And in all that time, what have you done to prepare? Silence. Shameful silence. Vance nodded slowly. I see. You watched an extinction-level threat approach for thousands of years, and you did nothing. You hoped it would change direction. You hoped someone else would stop it. You hoped that somehow, miraculously, the problem would solve itself. What would you have us do? Counselor Veth demanded. Attack them? That would only feed the swarm. Every ship we lose becomes part of them. Yes, it would. If you fought the way you always fight. If you fought defensively, cautiously, hoping to minimize losses. Vance's voice hardened. But humans do not fight to minimize losses. We fight to win. We fight to destroy the enemy so completely that they can never threaten us again. The collective cannot be destroyed, the military analyst said. They regenerate. They adapt. Have they ever faced humanity? The question hung in the air. The analyst had no answer. Vance turned to face the Senate. Counselors, I am not going to lie to you. The collective is the most dangerous enemy I have ever seen. They have consumed species far older and more powerful than mine. Defeating them may be impossible. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. But impossible is just a word. Humans have faced impossible odds before. We have fought enemies that should have destroyed us. We have survived plagues that should have exterminated us. We have overcome divisions that should have torn us apart. We do not accept impossible. We find a way. And what way do you propose to find? The Speaker asked. Let us fight. Let the human fleet engage the collective vanguard. Let us show you what humans can do when our backs are against the wall. You would sacrifice your ships? Veth asked. Your people? If necessary. Yes. Vance's voice did not waver. That is what we do, Counselor. We sacrifice so that others may live. We die so that the innocent may survive. It is the human way. The Senate debated for 3 days. The collective continued its advance. Finally, with no other options, they agreed to humanity's proposal. The human fleet gathered at the edge of collective territory. 4 ships, the Prometheus, the Achilles, the Thermopylae, and the Stalingrad. Each one was crewed by volunteers who understood they might not return. Each one carried weapons that humanity had developed in secret. Weapons designed for a threat they had always known would come, because humans had been watching the collective too. They had been studying it, analyzing it, learning its patterns, and they had been preparing. Captain Vance addressed her fleet from the bridge of the Prometheus. Her words were broadcast to every ship, heard by every crew member. Today we face an enemy that has never been defeated, an enemy that does not know fear, does not know mercy, does not know how to stop. For 4,000 years, the collective has consumed everything in its path. Today, that ends. She paused, looking at the faces of her crew. Men and women from every nation on Earth. Scientists and soldiers, engineers and pilots. The best humanity had to offer. We are not fighting for territory today. We are not fighting for resources or power or glory. We are fighting for the right of intelligent beings to exist. We are fighting for every species the collective has consumed. We are fighting for every world they will never touch because we stopped them here. Her voice grew harder. The collective does not understand what they are facing. They have never met a species like us. They have never faced an enemy that fights not because we must, but because we choose to. They have never encountered beings who would rather die than let evil triumph. She raised her fist. Today, we teach them. Today, we show them what humanity really is. Today, we become the nightmare that haunts the collective for the rest of eternity. The human fleet moved forward. Ahead of them, the collective vanguard waited. Thousands of biomechanical entities, ranging from small fighters to massive carrier organisms kilometers across. They moved with perfect coordination, a single mind controlling countless bodies. The battle began at 0600 hours, Galactic Standard Time. It would last 9 days. The collective fought as it always fought, with overwhelming numbers and relentless pressure. Swarms of entities poured toward the human ships, seeking to surround and absorb them. Tentacles reached across the vacuum, trying to latch onto hulls and begin the consumption process. But the humans were ready. The Prometheus led the assault, its railguns firing in patterns that seemed random but were anything but. Each shot was calculated to create chain reactions, destroying multiple entities with single projectiles. The ship moved constantly, never giving the collective a stationary target. The Achilles and Thermopylae flanked the formation, their weapons creating fields of destruction that no collective entity could survive. They fought back to back, covering each other's weaknesses, moving as a single unit despite being separate ships. And the Stalingrad did something that no collective opponent had ever done before. It charged directly into the heart of the swarm. The ship was a sacrifice. Its crew knew this. They had volunteered knowing they would not survive. But they did not go quietly. They carried a weapon that humanity had developed specifically for this moment, a device that generated a cascade reaction in collective biomass, turning their regenerative abilities against them. The Stalingrad reached the center of the vanguard formation. Its captain, a gray-haired woman named Ivanova, transmitted one final message. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone the collective has taken. This is how we say goodbye. The cascade device activated. A wave of energy rippled outward, touching every collective entity within range. And everywhere it touched, the collective began to die. Not just die, dissolve. The same regenerative processes that made them so dangerous now worked in reverse, breaking down biomass instead of building it up. Thousands of entities crumbled to dust in seconds. The heart of the vanguard simply ceased to exist. The Stalingrad went with them. Its crew died instantly, consumed by the same energy they had unleashed. But their sacrifice accomplished what 4,000 years of resistance had failed to achieve. The collective retreated. For the first time in its existence, the swarm stopped advancing. For the first time, it encountered something that actually threatened it. For the first time, it felt something that might have been called fear. The remaining human ships did not let them escape easily. For 8 more days, they pursued the retreating collective, destroying stragglers, preventing reorganization, making clear that this was not a temporary setback. This was a permanent change. When the battle finally ended, the collective vanguard was gone. Not just defeated, destroyed. The swarm that had terrified the galaxy for 4,000 years had been broken by 4 ships and the willingness to die for something greater than themselves. The news spread across civilized space like wildfire. Species that had given up hope began to believe again. Worlds that had prepared for absorption began to rebuild. The Concorde, which had accepted its own extinction, realized that it might actually survive. Ambassador Kethvari was waiting when the surviving human ships returned. Only 3 came back: the Prometheus, the Achilles, and the Thermopylae. They were battered, scarred, and exhausted, but they were victorious. Captain Vance stepped off the shuttle, looking older than she had just weeks before. Her uniform was torn, her face was pale, and her eyes held the weight of everyone she had lost. "Captain," Kethvari said, "I do not have words for what you have done. Words are not necessary." Vance's voice was hoarse. The Stalingrad had a crew of 400. They all knew they were not coming back. They went anyway. That is the only statement that matters. The collective is defeated? No. The vanguard is destroyed, but the collective is vast. They will return eventually, but not soon. And when they do, they will remember what happened here. They will remember that there is a species in this galaxy that cannot be absorbed, a species that fights back, a species that will die before surrendering. She looked up at the stars. The collective does not understand us. They cannot understand us. We are everything they are not. They are efficiency. We are defiance. They are calculation. We are sacrifice. They are the certainty of consumption. We are the impossible hope of resistance. Kethvari stood beside her, following her gaze. What you did, I still do not fully comprehend it. You sent your people to die. No, I let them choose to die. There is a difference. Vance turned to face the ambassador. Every person on the Stalingrad made their own choice. They were not ordered. They were not forced. They volunteered because they understood what was at stake. They chose to give their lives so that others could live. Why? Why would anyone make that choice? Vance was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. Because that is what it means to be human. We are not the smartest species. We are not the strongest. We are not the most advanced. But we have something that the collective will never understand. We have love. Love for our families, our friends, our species. Love for the idea of a future worth living. And love, Ambassador, is the only force in the universe more powerful than fear. She smiled, and despite her exhaustion, there was warmth in it. The collective consumes because that is all it knows. But humans protect. We protect the people we love. We protect the ideas we believe in. We protect the future we want to see. And when something threatens what we love, we fight. We fight until we cannot fight anymore. We fight until the threat is destroyed or we are. And if you are destroyed, then we die knowing we tried. We die standing up. We die human. Vance put her hand on the ambassador's shoulder. That is the secret the collective never understood. You cannot absorb beings who would rather die than surrender. You cannot consume a species that refuses to be consumed. The Concorde held a memorial service for the crew of the Stalingrad. 400 names were read aloud, one by one. 400 lives that had ended so that trillions could continue. The ceremony lasted for hours, and by the end, even the most skeptical counselors were weeping. Captain Vance stood at the front of the assembly, her face carved from stone. She did not cry. She had cried enough in the privacy of her quarters. Now, in public, she showed only strength. Strength for her crew. Strength for the Concorde. Strength for everyone who needed to believe that the darkness could be held back. After the service, Ambassador Kethvari found her standing alone, looking out at the stars. Captain, the Senate wishes to honor you. They want to give humanity a permanent seat on the council. They want to name a holiday after your victory. They want to... No. Vance did not turn around. We did not fight for honors. We did not sacrifice 400 lives for a holiday. We did it because it was right. We did it because someone had to. We did it because that is who we are. She finally turned to face the ambassador. Tell the Senate thank you. But no. The best way to honor the Stalingrad is to make sure their sacrifice meant something. Build defenses. Train soldiers. Prepare for the day the collective returns. Make sure that when that day comes, the galaxy is ready. And humanity? Vance smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. Humanity will be where we always are. On the front lines. In the darkness. Between the monsters and the innocent. She looked back at the stars. That is our purpose now. That is what we were born to do. To fight the battles no one else can fight. To face the horrors no one else can face. To be the shield that protects civilization from its own destruction. She began walking toward her shuttle, then stopped. Ambassador, tell your Senate one more thing. Yes, Captain. Tell them that the crew of the Stalingrad did not die as victims. They died as warriors. They died as heroes. They died as humans. Her voice grew hard. And tell them that for every human who falls, 10 more will rise to take their place. We are not a species that surrenders. We are not a species that gives up. We are humanity, and we have just begun to fight. She walked away, leaving the ambassador alone with the stars and the weight of everything she had witnessed. The humans had saved the galaxy. They had done the impossible, and they had done it by being exactly what everyone had feared they were: violent, relentless, terrifying, but also brave, selfless, willing to die for strangers they had never met. The galaxy would never be the same. The collective would never forget. And somewhere in the darkness, monsters who had hunted with impunity for millennia looked toward civilized space and felt, for the first time in their existence, afraid. The humans had arrived, and they had brought terror with them, but it was a terror that served the light, a terror that protected the innocent, a terror that the darkness had every reason to fear. And that, Cathvari realized, was exactly what the universe needed. 5 years had passed since the Battle of the Threshold. 5 years since the Void Collective learned that the galaxy contained something it could not consume. 5 years since everything changed. Ambassador Cathvari stood on the observation deck of the Concorde's newest station, watching the stars. Behind her, the sounds of celebration echoed through the corridors. Today marked the anniversary of humanity's arrival in Concorde space. Today, the galaxy remembered how close it had come to extinction and how it had been saved. The view from the deck showed a galaxy transformed. Where once there had been fear and decline, now there was hope and growth. New colonies spread across systems that had been abandoned for centuries. Trade routes reopened that had been closed for generations. Species that had retreated into isolation were venturing out again, believing at last that the future might be worth seeing. And everywhere, the black shapes of human warships moved through the darkness, watching, protecting, waiting. "You look thoughtful, Ambassador." Cathvari turned. Admiral Helena Vance stood behind her, wearing the formal uniform of the United Earth Navy. She had changed in the years since they first met. Her hair was grayer now, her face more lined, but her eyes still held the same steel determination that had terrified Cathvari on that first day aboard the Prometheus. "I was thinking about how different everything is," Cathvari replied. 5 years ago we were preparing for the end. Now we are celebrating survival. Survival is always worth celebrating. Vance moved to stand beside her at the viewing window, especially when it was not certain. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars together. "The Senate is preparing to offer you something," Cathvari said finally. "They want to give humanity full membership in the Concord, a permanent seat on the council, equal status with the founding species." Vance nodded slowly. "I know. We are going to decline. May I ask why?" The Admiral turned to face her. "Because we did not save the Concorde to join it. We saved it because it needed saving. We saved it because that is what we do." "I do not understand. Do you not want the power? The influence? The recognition?" Vance laughed. It was a strange sound, unexpected and genuine. "Ambassador, humanity has been seeking power and influence and recognition for our entire history. We fought each other for it. We killed each other for it. We nearly destroyed ourselves for it." She shook her head. "We learned something important in all that bloodshed. Power is not the goal. Power is the tool. The goal is using that power to protect the things that matter. And what matters to humanity?" Vance gestured at the stars. "All of it. Every world. Every species. Every being who deserves a chance to live in peace." Her voice softened. "We spent so long fighting each other, Ambassador. So long killing our own kind over differences that seem meaningless now. When we finally reached the stars, when we finally saw the true scale of the universe, we realized something. We were not alone. And the universe was full of threats that made our petty conflicts look like children's games." She turned back to the viewing window. "The Concorde does not need humanity as a member. It needs humanity as a protector. It needs beings who are willing to stand at the borders and face the darkness. Beings who are willing to pay the price that peace demands. What price is that? Blood. Sacrifice. The willingness to do terrible things so that others do not have to." Vance's voice grew hard. "The Concorde has spent 11,000 years pretending that price does not exist. They built a civilization on the belief that violence could be abolished, that peace could be maintained through good intentions alone, and they nearly died for that belief. We were naive. You were hopeful. There is a difference." Vance smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Humans used to be hopeful too. Long ago, we used to believe that one day, our species would evolve beyond violence. That one day, We would become peaceful beings who never needed to fight. We dreamed of that future. What happened to that dream? Reality happened. War happened. Genocide happened. We learned that violence is not a disease that can be cured. It is a part of existence, a fundamental truth of the universe. The only question is not whether violence will exist, but who will wield it, and for what purpose. She reached out and touched the window, her fingers leaving faint traces on the surface. The Concorde's mistake was thinking that by refusing to wield violence, they could escape it. But violence does not go away just because you refuse to look at it. It comes for you anyway. The hegemony came. The Void Collective came. They came because they saw weakness, and predators always attack weakness. And humanity? Vance's smile turned cold. We are not weak. We have never been weak. Even at our lowest points, when we were dying by the millions, we fought back. We always fight back. It is in our nature. It is in our blood. It is the one thing about us that will never change. Keth very considered this for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been haunting her for 5 years. Are we safe now, Admiral? Is the Concorde truly protected? No, Vance answered without hesitation. You are not safe. You will never be safe. Safety is an illusion, Ambassador. The galaxy is vast and old and full of things that want to consume or destroy everything you have built. The collective will return someday. The hegemony still exists, and there are other threats out there, things we have not even discovered yet, waiting in the darkness. She turned to face Kethvari directly. But here is what I can promise you. As long as humanity exists, as long as there is breath in our lungs and fire in our hearts, we will fight for you. We will stand between you and the darkness. We will do the terrible things that need to be done so that your children can grow up in peace. Why? Why would you do this for species who are not your own? Because that is who we are. Vance's voice was quiet but firm. We spent millennia learning how to kill, learning how to destroy, learning how to wage war with terrible efficiency. And then, when we reached the stars, we had to ask ourselves, what is all that knowledge for? What is the point of being the most dangerous species in the galaxy if we do not use that danger to protect the innocent? She reached out and touched the ambassador's shoulder. You called us barbarians once. You looked at our history and saw only blood and horror. But you missed the other side of that story. Yes, we killed each other. Yes, we did terrible things. But we also saved each other. We protected each other. We sacrificed ourselves for each other. In the midst of all that violence, we learned the most important lesson any species can learn. What lesson is that? That life matters. Every life. Not just human life, but all life. That the universe is cold and dark and uncaring, but we do not have to be. That we can choose to be better. We can choose to fight for something greater than ourselves. She let her hand fall. Humanity has made that choice, Ambassador. We have chosen to be the protectors of the galaxy. Not because anyone asked us to. Not because we expect reward or gratitude, but because someone has to do it, and we are the only ones who can. The celebration continued around them. But in this moment, there were only 2 beings in the universe. 2 representatives of species separated by evolution and culture in thousands of light years, connected by something deeper. Shared purpose, shared hope, shared commitment to a future worth fighting for. There is one more thing I must tell you, Vance said. The Prometheus and our other ships are leaving tomorrow. We are going to the frontier, the unexplored regions beyond Concorde space. There are threats gathering there, things that would make the collective look like a minor nuisance. We are going to find them and stop them before they can reach civilized space. You are leaving? But the celebration was not for us. Vance smiled. It was for the Concorde, for the species who survived and the future they will build together. Humanity does not need celebrations, Ambassador. We need battles. We need enemies. We need something to fight. That sounds exhausting. It is. It is the most exhausting existence imaginable. Always watching, always waiting, always ready for the next threat. Vance's eyes went distant. But it is also the most meaningful. Every day, I wake up knowing that my actions matter, that the battles I fight protect billions of innocent beings, that my species has finally found its purpose in the universe. Kethvari felt tears forming in her eyes. In all her centuries of diplomatic service, she had never met anyone like Helena Vance. The woman was everything the Concord had feared about humanity. Violent, dangerous, utterly committed to the use of force. But she was also everything the Concord desperately needed. Brave, selfless, willing to sacrifice herself for strangers. "I do not know how to thank you," Kethvari said. "For everything you have done, do not thank us. Prove that our sacrifices were worth it." Vance's voice hardened. "Build a Concord that deserves protection. Create a civilization that values freedom, justice, and the dignity of all intelligent life. Make something beautiful out of this galaxy, Ambassador. Make something that our children will be proud to defend. And if we fail, then we will keep defending you anyway." Vance smiled, and for a moment, she looked almost peaceful. "That is the nature of our commitment. It does not depend on your worthiness. It does not require your gratitude. We will fight for you because fighting is what we do. We will protect you because protection is our purpose. We will die for you because that is the price we have chosen to pay." She began to walk toward the door, then stopped. "One final thing, Ambassador. A warning." Kethvari straightened. "Yes? The galaxy is watching you now. The predators, the monsters, the things that lurk in the darkness. They have seen what happened to the Hegemony Raiders. They have seen what happened to the Void Collective. They know that humanity stands between them and the civilized worlds." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "But we cannot be everywhere. We cannot fight every battle. There will come a time when a threat appears and no human ships are there to stop it. When that happens, you must be ready. You must be willing to fight for yourselves." "I understand." "No, you do not. Not yet." Vance turned to face her one last time. "But you will. We are going to teach you, not just how to use weapons, but how to use them wisely. Not just how to fight, but when to fight. Not just how to win, but what is worth winning." She stepped closer to the Ambassador. "The Concord has spent 11,000 years running from violence. Now you must learn to embrace it. Not as something good, but as something necessary. Not as a first resort, but as a last resort that must always be available. Violence is a tool, Ambassador. Like any tool, it can build or destroy. Humanity has learned to use it for building. We will teach you to do the same. And then, one day, you will not need us anymore. You will have your own protectors, your own warriors, your own shields against the darkness." Vance smiled, and there was something wistful in her expression. "That is our goal, Ambassador. Not to rule the galaxy, but to make it strong enough to defend itself. Not to be worshipped as saviors, but to work ourselves out of a job. I cannot imagine a galaxy without humanity watching over it. Neither can I. But that does not mean we should not try to create one." Vance opened the door. Beyond, the sounds of celebration grew louder. "Goodbye, Ambassador. We will meet again when the next crisis comes. Until then, remember what I told you. Remember what humanity really is." "What are you?" Vance paused in the doorway. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 400 years of human history. 400 years of war and peace and sacrifice and hope. "We are the ones who go into the darkness so that others can live in the light. We are the price that the universe demands for civilization. We are the violence that protects peace, the terror that guards the innocent, the nightmare that hunts the nightmares." She looked back over her shoulder, and her eyes burned with the fire of 1,000 battles. "We are humanity. We are the thing that monsters fear, and we will never, ever stop fighting for you." She walked away, disappearing into the crowd of celebrating beings. Kethvari watched her go, feeling the weight of everything she had learned pressing down on her. The celebration continued through the night. Species that had never danced together moved in awkward harmony. Languages that had never mixed blended into songs of hope and gratitude. The galaxy celebrated its survival, its future, its chance to build something beautiful among the stars. And somewhere in the darkness, the human fleet prepared for departure. Ships loaded supplies, crews said goodbye to loved ones. Captains reviewed mission plans for expeditions into the unknown. They were leaving the safety of civilized space, heading toward dangers that no one had ever faced. They were afraid. Of course they were afraid. They were human, after all, and humans had never been stupid enough to face death without fear. But they were going anyway, because that was what humans did. They faced their fears. They fought their battles. They paid the prices that no one else was willing to pay. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge of the Prometheus as it prepared to leave orbit. Around her, crew members moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for a journey that would take them to the edge of the known universe. "Admiral," said her first officer, "we are ready to depart. Any last messages for the Concord?" "No, Admiral. Just the standard notification of our departure." Vance nodded. She looked at the view screen, where the Concord's capital world hung like a blue jewel against the blackness of space. Millions of beings lived down there, going about their daily lives, safe and protected because humanity had chosen to make them so. "Helm," she said, "take us out." The Prometheus turned away from the light and headed toward the darkness. The Achilles and Thermopylae followed, along with a dozen new ships that had been built in the 5 years since the Battle of the Threshold. Together, they formed a fleet that could face any threat the galaxy might produce. Behind them, the Concorde celebrated. Before them, unknown dangers waited, and between the two, humanity stood guard, as they always had, as they always would. The thing that monsters feared, the terror that served the light, the warship that brought not destruction, but salvation. Earth had not sent diplomats. Earth had sent something far more valuable. Earth had sent hope, wrapped in terror, armed with love, ready to fight for everyone who could not fight for themselves, and the galaxy would never be the same. The stars waited, cold and indifferent. The darkness stretched on forever. But somewhere in that endless night, human ships moved forward, carrying the fire of defiance into the void. They were not going to save the galaxy alone. They were going to teach the galaxy how to save itself. And that, Ambassador Keth Vary realized as she watched the human fleet disappear into the darkness, was the greatest gift any species could give. Not protection, not safety, not peace, but the courage to fight for all three. That was humanity's gift to the universe. And it was a gift that would never stop giving. The celebration continued. The fleet departed. The future stretched out before them, uncertain and dangerous and full of possibility. And somewhere in the darkness, a species that had nearly destroyed itself 100 times learned the most important lesson of all. That survival is not enough. That existence is not the goal. That the only life worth living is one spent fighting for something greater than yourself. The humans understood this. They had always understood it, and now, they were teaching the rest of the galaxy to understand it too. One battle at a time. One sacrifice at a time. One impossible victory at a time. Until the darkness itself learned to fear the light. Until the monsters themselves learned to run from hope. Until the galaxy finally understood what humanity had known all along. That the meek do not inherit anything. That the strong protect the meek. And that humanity would always, always be strong enough. For everyone, forever.